My friends, welcome back. My name is Silver Slayer. We are here with Andy Scheckman for another weekly show. Folks, we have some new deals. Every single week, Miles Franklin has new deals, and I got a treat for you guys this week. Check this out. We have 90% constitutional silver, which is dimes and quarters for $3 over spot, right? That's a steal. Also, 10th ounce gold maples, 5 coin minimum, $30 over melt. And last but not least, it's Christmas time. An American Eagle is the perfect gift, whether it's your second cousin, whether it's your wife, husband, whether it's your grandson, you can't go wrong. $4.99 over spot, no minimum. Last week, we had a minimum of 100, but we said, you know what? Let's take it a step further and no minimum. So slayer@milesfranklin.com. We changed my email. So now it's slayer@milesfranklin.com. I'll get you guys hooked up. So Andy, good to see you again. What's going on?
Good
What do
to
you want to
see
talk
you
about?
too, brother. Good to see you too. Yeah, it's a crazy time. The holidays always gets a little bit crazy, and I know we want to talk about all that stuff. I just want to make a point real quick for people who want to purchase. We're getting to that point right now where it's getting close to the holidays. I'd say this is the last week before things kind of shut down. You got UPS that you can't count
Yeah.
on once you start shipping real close to Christmas, and
Yep.
we're almost there. And then you get New Year's, so you got Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. You got 4 days between the 25th and the end of the year, whereby you're not going to get any packages. So if you want to do something, time is of the essence. Certainly, we don't mind taking orders that get shipped, into 2024. But I just wanted to make that point. We're already at the 12th hour. So again, just so psyched to have you part of the team, brother. You know, it's not something that I extend to everyone. And there's something about you that, 100,000 people that are following you, I think, understand that. So again, not to say this over and over and over, but it bears mentioning. We're very, very thrilled and honored to have you part of the team. Welcome aboard, and I think 2024 is going to be an interesting year for us all. And who better to
Yeah.
kind of comment on it than you? So yeah, what's going on? Lots of stuff going on, man. It's one of these deals where uh, things keep accelerating. Al Gore is telling us that because the people are no longer getting the same news, let's call it propaganda, and the government can't control the algorithms that are out there, that it's threatening democracy. So evidently guys like you and I are threatening democracy. He's talking about trying to curtail and social media, because
Speaking the truth.
yeah, seeking the truth, that we need to all follow follow the narrative from the mainstream. So, but there are a lot of things out there that are happening that we're not hearing about. One thing I wanted to mention real quick, and then I'll get into any questions that you have. We can talk about gold and silver, because there's some silver news too out there. But you know, I talked a lot about over the years, and I might have mentioned with you last time, about Saudi Arabia and all of their goings ons. We talked about how they joined the BRICS, how they've joined the Belt Road Initiative with every other OPEC country. They joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We've talked about how they told everyone in Davos that they would be interested and open into to listening to taking other currencies for oil. But that's not as provocative as the United Arab Emirates, who just made the announcement that we're not going to take dollars for oil any longer. Now, they made this announcement last week, 2 days before they invited 200 delegates from countries around the world to the United Nations meeting on climate change in Dubai. And when you realize that you have the chairman of the state-owned oil company presiding over this meeting, who has 200 countries from around the world there, and 2 days before, hey, we're done taking dollars for oil. Is this a shot across the bow, or is it a coincidence? Now, I think it's obviously a shot across the bow. You have the United Arab Emirates, who was admitted into the BRICS with Saudi Arabia, alongside Saudi Arabia. They're the seventh largest oil producer in the world, and a member of OPEC. So the things that I've been talking about the eventual loss of the petro status, it's happening and you can see it. Now, one thing that I, wanted to chat about, because I might have mentioned that this happened last week, but what's interesting is that Putin, who hasn't left Russia but twice in 2 years because there's a bounty on his head from the West, flew to in an unannounced and impromptu meeting, flew to the United Arab Emirates just the other day, flanked by 4 Russian fighter jets, and had a meeting with United Arab Emirates, unannounced, unannounced and impromptu, and really we don't know much about it. Is it coincidence that right after he tells the world, or Dubai tells the world, United Arab Emirates, we're not going to take dollars anymore? Is there a coincidence that Putin makes a impromptu meeting to the UAE and then goes directly from there to Saudi Arabia? Now, is this a coincidence? Don't know. You remember what happened to the last couple of guys that tried to move away from the dollar, taking oil with Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi? There was a little bit of a regime change going on there, but that's what this whole BRICS coalition represents.
Right.
It represents a pushback against really the 500-year Western dominance.
Yep.
Not just the United States. Before that, you had plenty of countries in Europe that ruled the roost, the United Kingdom and Spain and the Dutch, and all of these countries and cultures have really ruled the world for the better part of 5 centuries. And all of the other countries now that are joining together, including the 20 other that have formally applied and the 40 who have expressed interest, are becoming rather formidable. And to see Putin leave for only maybe the second time in a few years, to fly right after these announcements were made, I find to be very interesting. And it goes along with that logarithmic decay idea that I talk about. Little by little by little by little by little, we are chopping away at the dollar hegemony. And you can see that they are becoming real. So I just wanted to mention that as we jump into things, that, my central thesis will not change. And I will be boring and I will talk about a progression of events that I have been for 4 years, starting with gold's reclassification as tier 1, and everything that's happened since. And I will tell you, in my mind, none of these things are coincidental. So as we talk about things around the periphery, the price of gold and silver, the other geopolitical events, or what's happening here at home, to me, it all is part of the same progression of events. And I want to keep our eye on the ball as we talk through 2024 about this de-dollarization trend, because it is the petrodollar status, the world reserve status, that has given us this exorbitant privilege, one that we should be clinging to as a country, that we are doing everything in our power to lose. So I just wanted to mention that as we kick things off, because is it coincidence that Putin flew there flanked by 4 fighter jets unannounced, or is it not? And that's what I really wanted to start today with. But other than that, let's kick it off. Let's talk, man.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of people don't see the bigger picture. I think all these oil-rich countries, why in the world would they want us to go green? So
they wouldn't want us to go green, and that's just it. We're antagonizing them. And when you look at that's the, to cling to the world reserve status, people need to understand that part of the deal not only was to value oil in dollars globally for the protection of the Saudi kingdom, but also to take the proceeds of those dollars and reinvest them in treasuries. And how's that been going for the last few years? But, when we signed an executive order to go green, this dovetails with Jared Bernstein's thesis, who's the lead economic advisor to the U.S. government, whose whole thesis is that the reserve currency status is a privilege we can no longer afford. The distortions that it creates, the trade imbalances it creates, is something we cannot afford. And so, look, these countries are saying, geez, are we next? By weaponizing the dollar, by coercion and sanctioning and confiscating the assets of 2 of the BRICS members, Iran and Russia, you have all of these countries are saying, geez, are we next? And this is where the safety in numbers is being found. And the second piece of the puzzle is, why the hell would we tell the world that we're going green if it is the petrodollar status that gives us the dollar hegemony, that gives us the world reserve status, unless it was something we wanted to lose. So by
Yeah.
weaponizing the dollar and by going green, I think we are moving down a path. And you can think logically. I mean, it doesn't make sense if you wanted to cling to the status of being world reserve, weaponize the dollar and then tell the world we're going green would be about the two biggest steps you could make to
Yeah.
lose that status. Well, that dovetails exactly to what the lead economic advisor to the White House is looking for. And it's not a good thing. It really isn't. And then when you look at it from their standpoint, why would they be going green? Well, they're a bunch of idiots, and that's what they're saying about us. And then they look at it, well, geez, the dollar is inflating 7 to 10% per year. I don't care what the CPI says. Go to John Williams of Shadow Stats and look at what his numbers are. And he'll tell you 7 to 10% at least in inflation. So the dollar is losing that and then reinvesting into the treasury market. 10-year treasuries got its butt kicked unlike anything that the bond market's ever experienced, ever in the last few years. So they're getting crushed in bonds, they're losing money to inflation, and they're being protected by a country that is doing things through coercion, and they're signed protection agreements that with countries that have as big nuclear arsenals as the West does. You can see the whole thing coming together, and it isn't a positive development for the West, period. So I think it's important to talk about these things that every week seem to be adding to this progression of events. And that's why I wanted to kick it off that way, because to me, everything else around it is a byproduct of potentially losing the dollar's reserve status.
Yeah. Every week we do the show, and every week something new happens that is
That's
just
the point.
confirming. Yeah. It's crazy.
And then at the same time, after all of this happens, the Russia and Saudi Arabia and the rest of OPEC came out and said, we're going to cut 2.2 million barrels of oil per day. So, they're not helping the West, certainly, in terms of oil prices or the price of gasoline, especially heading into election. You'd think it would go the other way. At the same time, Biden has drained our strategic stockpile of oil to a level that, I don't know if it's ever been this low. So all of these things are adding up. And it's like, at what point does it become coincidence? What point does it become reality? Or what point does it become just too stupid to be stupid? I don't know. I think that we're at this point right now where if you just take a step back and look at these progression of events that are accelerating, and you got 20 other countries that have formally applied. So what is 11 countries next year could become 32, but there's 20 others that have informally expressed interest. So 32 becomes 52. At what point does it become the Belt Road Initiative, which right now has 150 plus countries and 75% of human population in and of itself? At what point do all of these countries say we're with the BRICS? And it's a lot harder for these countries independently to stand up to the West, like Iraq did and like Libya did. But try to do that now in a conglomerate of countries who have a military might equal or greater to ours when combined together.
What do you think if Trump won? What do you think he would try to do? I don't feel like he would try to purposely lose the dollar.
Well, we would certainly hope not. I think he would try to rectify things as quickly as possible. But, I think that you reach a point where you cross a line where it's very difficult to come back from. Now, by all measurements, it seems like he was well liked by the Saudis. He flew into Saudi Arabia and had that they gave him a greeting that they reserved for only the highest of dignitaries and kings or whatnot. You don't see it very often. And he had a good relationship by all measurements with Putin. With obviously with North Korea. I don't know how his relationship was with Xi Jinping. I mean, they did have tariffs going on with China. They were tough with them, but we were respected more than anything. And I think on the world stage, we've lost a good deal of respect and certainly much of the good graces that our foreign creditors have extended us for the better part of 50 years. So he would be a whole hell of a lot better than the administration we have right now. My only fear is that the damage being done by this administration, and certainly they have another 10 months to really screw the pooch, I just wonder, are we able to come back from such a place?
Yeah,
But let's hope, God forbid, that it doesn't happen,
yeah,
that Trump or someone else is able to come in and rectify the ills of the current, which will then hopefully be the previous administration.
yeah. I wonder what was said at this climate change conference with all those countries. Obviously, they don't want to go green. So, what would the solution be for
Well,
them?
I think I know one of the things that was said, there was the former president of Ireland, a woman, and she was talking about climate change, and I think she was interrupted by the chairman of the United Arab Emirates state-owned oil company, and he said, "Listen, just so you know, if we do these things, we're going to send people back to the caves. That you're going to send civilization backwards." But not only that, this isn't a well thought out agenda. The majority of the rare earth metals that you need to do this,
Yeah,
to make batteries and to make all of the green vehicles that you would need. Vehicles the wrong word. The green components that you would need to build batteries and whatnot are found in the Eurasian continent and places like Indonesia and China. And President, I think, Widodo from Indonesia has been calling for an OPEC style cartel of the rare earth metals. We do not have the ability to go green in this country without the assistance of other countries who are moving against us. It's like it's not
yeah.
a well thought out agenda at all. And
And
I just find it to be very concerning, and yet
yeah,
the media doesn't talk about any of this.
and the mining is disgusting. If you've ever seen any of what's going on in these mines, it's kids 5, 6 years old and bare feet, like cobalt mines, lithium mines. It is very working for like a penny a day. It is very sad. Pregnant mothers and people don't see that part of it. But you were just talking about, because this is something I really wanted. I had a couple topics, and then I have another one. I have two things I really want to hit on. One is deeper into the Belt Road Initiative, but I want to talk about the Silver Institute's conference with the LBMA that happened a couple days ago. I covered it live on my channel. Like I had my actual my video, my face showing, because I wanted everyone to see like my live reaction, and I just broke it down. I would pause at certain points. It was very interesting because I was curious, right? Because we're talking about the Silver Institute, Phyllis Baker, CEO of Hecla Mining, the guy that also said there's no silver shortage. But I was curious if they were going to mention that, because it was talking about silver's role in the green economy moving forwards. That was the topic. The guy that was hosting this, he I feel knew. He was the one kind of pushing the question, because it was your very bland, like, Silver Institute's numbers. But no, I feel like there was this elephant in the room. Nobody wanted to say, do we actually, is this even realistic? Nobody wanted to say it until the question was there. And just like the interview, the guy says, we have enough silver in these reserves. Coming from the LBMA, the conference that he's sitting in that room with, that admitted they have their silver reserves are near empty. And then the guy that was hosting says, well, what about the Silver Institute's numbers? Mining production has decreased over year, every single year. Demand is rising, and we're going to have another record-breaking supply deficit next year. And then Phillips Baker says, yeah, we're going to exceed 1.2 billion ounces, which was the previous year. And then he goes in to say, yeah, record supply deficit. He said it's harder to find silver. He mines silver himself. So it's all contradicting. He went into probably 15 minutes of talk contradicting himself, saying that we have enough silver, but everything he says after that, I
Well, that's
don't.
why telling a lie is never a good idea, because when you tell a lie, it's very hard to remember exactly what you said. And so he's contradicting himself. That's why it would be much better just to be honest about it, and he'll never
Yeah,
contradict himself. I mean, he's being dishonest. Silver is disappearing in nature. It's found, as we've talked about, in a form called epithermal, very near the surface, and it's disappearing. And as it's disappearing, you have an increase in demand industrially for sure, not to mention monetarily. So here we are again with another record deficit. So, I think what it is a guy being caught in a lie, and that's because he's out there talking so much to the world, he's forgetting what he said a few months before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time, you got countries out there that are, trying to call the bluff. Turkey's imports of silver is at a record high. In 2023, they've already imported 990 tons, about 32 million troy ounces. And, the year's not over yet. So you got
That's
60
crazy.
million ounces that was imported by India in October, and China another 10 million ounces. And how much of that is, how much more is being reported that or imported that isn't being reported? And I wonder, but you can see that the big players understand that the rhetoric coming out of the West and the Western, mouthpieces is not true. And this guy just proved it.
I want to move into something you mentioned. You say the word a lot, but I always try to come from like a perspective of someone that's kind of new into this, maybe just found my channel and starting. What is the Belt Road Initiative? Right? Like I'm aware you've mentioned it. I asked you this probably 6 months ago, but we have a lot of new viewers. So break down the Belt Road Initiative for someone who maybe doesn't really, know what it is. Or
Sure, it's the largest infrastructure project ever attempted in human history. It's kind of like the old Silk Road. It's China's attempt to connect Asia, Africa, South America, little bit of Europe, through a series of infrastructure channels, roads and bridges and maritime channels. Um, it will be patrolled only by military and commerce. It's the Panama Canal on steroids. Today, it represents close to 50% of global GDP and 75% of human population.
that is
It's
crazy.
what you basically have is China coming into these countries like Africa and like South America and industrializing them for a piece of the pie. Now, the West would come in through coercion and sanctions and bullying and
Yeah.
come in and try to do these things. China does it differently. They come in and they say, look, we'll build oil refineries and gold and silver mines, and we'll build the infrastructure to bring the finished goods to market. We will help industrialize your country and build the middle class for a peace in a cooperative manner. And what it really is a whole series of trade routes that will be protected by a military presence that isn't the U.S. Navy, that isn't the West. And the U.S. Navy is really their largest role is to patrol the shipping lanes of the world. And now all of this will be done without the assistance of the U.S. Navy. It will be the assistance of the Chinese military, amongst others. And it is an endeavor that I find to be very intriguing that the West is not part of. It's the
Yeah.
largest infrastructure project ever attempted. And I think when you put it together with all of the other things that are happening in terms of the coalition of countries with the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasian Economic Union, they're all intertwined. And it's a very big deal. It is a huge deal. That when this starts to really take hold, you have a whole infrastructure that is creating a massive center of commerce, and the West isn't part of it. So it's a very, very, very big deal, and goes along this progression of events that I've been talking about. So, it started with gold being reclassified tier one, and then you see the rise of the Belt Road. So you got all the countries accumulating and repatriating their gold. You have infrastructure that is being made. There's something called the North-South Corridor that goes along with the Belt Road Initiative. It's a path that they've created basically from more or less from Iran to India, and you have you're going through Russia, and you got all of these pathways that are being protected by groups that are on the same page that the West won't be able to access, and it cuts the shipping time down tremendously. Instead of having to go around, I think it's the Straits of Hormuz. I'm not a geographic whiz, but if I had the map in front of me, it would be a lot easier just off the top of my head. But you have a series of infrastructure channels that will be used to distribute the world's commodities, and you have the majority of human population on this mass of infrastructure. And it's not something to be taken lightly, especially when you throw all of the other things together
Yeah.
into it. You start to put it together and
Yeah.
you can see, well, these countries possess the majority of the world's commodities, the majority of the world's energy. They have a military might bigger than ours when combined, bigger GDP, massive human population. All of these things put together makes the Belt Road Initiative that much more formidable. And it's already 150 plus countries have signed on to it, but not the West. So yeah, it's a big deal.
If you live in America, like this all sounds probably scary, and it is. Only thing we can do that's in our power individually is own precious metals. Like, because I'm sure, like a lot of people, it's human nature to what can I do right now, right? Well, what can I do? All you can do is protect yourself and prepare, and precious metals is the answer for that. Obviously, if you want to get into prepping, you could get food and all that, but when we're talking about security and building something for your family and making sure everyone's safe, I feel like gold and silver is the only true solution to protect yourself.
Well, it's one of the best. That's for darn sure. I mean, there are other
Yeah,
things that you could do, like to get yourself out of debt,
yeah,
best you can. Remove counterparty risk is certainly one of the things that precious metals offer you, because I think counterparty risk is going to be something that is a very, very dirty phrase in the coming months ahead, with all of the instability, the over leverage, and the undercapitalization of the banking system, and the bail-in threat. And when you talk about what gold and silver represent, to me, they represent wealth. They're not an investment. When you see the
yeah,
central banks of the world accumulating more than at any time in central bank history, that should be a big indicator. And these people are not just the wealthiest, but they have the playbook. They're the most well informed. So gold and silver represent wealth that is outside the matrix, that is unencumbered, that is not simultaneously someone else's liability. So yes, you own it not to get wealthy, but that it
yeah,
is wealth. And in times
yeah,
of great uncertainty and of change, that's why you own it. And I think it's important to say that. Look, yeah, I own a precious metals company. Yes, you and I have a relationship, and you're representing my company as well. And I'm honored for that. And part of what I have struggled with being on YouTube for all of these years is trying to let people understand that there doesn't have to be good intentions, and
right.
running a good business do not
I
need to
mean,
be mutually exclusive.
we
Yeah, I
buy
run a
we buy
company. I want to
silver
make money,
ourselves.
but I also want people to understand that I am
Yeah,
completely genuine in the things that I am saying and seeing, and
yeah,
use your own due diligence and your own research after hearing some of these things to validate and verify.
yeah,
And if you come to the same conclusion that I do and that you have, that man, this is scary as hell, and you can see this group of mass of humanity growing against the West. Well, what happens if I'm right? What happens if there's a 20 or 25% chance that I'm right? Shouldn't you at least then validate having something in the way of gold and silver? And
yeah,
point is that yeah, gold and silver represent unencumbered wealth outside the system with no counterparty risk. And I think that's really the main point here, is that if you are fully invested in dollars and dollar-based assets, there's a high probability in my mind you become a victim before this thing is all said
yeah,
and done.
yeah. And it's not like we don't stack silver and gold, Like I this was a core silver stacking channel, not making a penny, just showing off my silver coins, unboxings, right? It's more of just trying to help people protect their wealth. And I
You don't
also
owe
agree,
anyone in
you
the
don't.
world an apology. You don't.
Yeah,
And that's the thing, is that if people, the 100,000 people who are on your channel haven't figured out you're for real by now, I figured it out in 30 seconds. And that's why
yeah,
I keep saying that I'm honored to work with you, because
yeah,
to me, the only thing that matters in a world losing integrity are people who have it. And, you're for real. And it seems that everyone out there isn't.
yeah.
And or at least lots of people out there aren't. And it's a sad statement, but look at what's happening around this country. Look at the lawlessness and the divisiveness and the anger and the this country is not united any longer. And this country is, everyone is a cynic because they think everyone's out to pick your pocket and to take from you. And it's a sad statement. It's a sad state of affairs. So I would rather work with someone like you who is true and genuine and is trying to help people and has a proven history of that long before you were making any money. You're giving away your own silver. And that's why I say I'll always take part in helping you do these giveaways. But that's the point. And God bless you for doing it. I think that what goes around comes around in life. I've learned that myself.
It's the least I can do for my subscribers. Like people don't understand. Like I genuinely appreciate and love like all of my viewers, and that's why I've had some of the most amazing phone calls over the last couple of days with you guys. Someone who wants to place an order or whatever, slayer@milesfranklin.com. You can call me. I've talked to a lot of this guy, man. Last night we talked on the phone for probably 30 minutes, not even all just about silver, just talking. And it was so cool. I've never had that opportunity to just talk to my fans, just talk to people on a one-to-one basis. So I appreciate you guys a lot.
Knock it off.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Is there anything else you wanted to
let me take a look at, I got some notes here. Let's see. You have the numbers that have been published by the US government. And I was reading an interesting article by one of my favorite authors, and Simon Black. And he was talking about the fiscal year that just ended on September 30th. And where he said that the US government took in 4.4 trillion in tax revenue, but spending ballooned to 6.3 trillion. And so you have a $2 trillion deficit. He showed a link directly to the US government's website where they're saying in 2024, federal spending is projected to run to 6.8 trillion, 7.1 trillion in 2025, and 10 trillion by the end of 2033. Now, tax revenues have been decreasing lately. So as you have a falling tax revenue base, you have record spending that by the government's own admission will do nothing but increase, which doesn't even take into account any potential black swans or events that we haven't even talked about. And, this basically, think about it this way, that the government says that by 2031, in 7 years, all of the tax revenue will go just to pay interest on the national debt plus the mandatory entitlement spendings like Social Security, which is 70 plus trillion in debt in the whole, underfunded. IOUs, 70 trillion. A trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. So that means that in 7 years, by the government's own numbers, everything other than the entitlements and the interest on the debt will need to be borrowed, including military. So how likely is it for the United States to be the world reserve currency and the world's dominant superpower when we need to borrow money just to fund our military? This becomes a situation that is unattainable. And that's why when people say, when's this going to happen? Why hasn't it happened? Well, it's because instant gratification for these people is not soon enough. I think you have to look at the numbers, the logic, the mathematics, the economic, take a step back and say, it's going to happen. It's a world of probabilities. The probability is that the shit hits the fan at some point. These numbers become reality. Now, this doesn't even talk about the potential loss of the petrodollar and what would happen then. So this is a situation that, by the government's own admission, is growing rapidly out of control. And ask yourself, how can we be the world's dominant superpower when in 7 years we're borrowing money to fund our military? Doesn't work that way. If all of the money is that you make is going just to pay the interest on your Visa card and your mandatory spending. So whatever that mandatory spending is, and you have no money left for anything else, well, that's a problem. You're not the superpower anymore. Quite to the contrary, you are at the mercy of your creditors. And if the creditors say we're done, then who steps in? Well, the Federal Reserve. That's called monetization of assets, where the Federal Reserve buys the U.S. Treasuries exclusively directly from the Fed, which is illegal, but goes to the Treasury, goes directly to the Treasury, buys all the bonds, and hyperinflates the currency, and it becomes Weimar Republic Germany. We have crossed that line where it's very difficult, I think, to ever come back from. We are at 130% debt to GDP, brother, and there's never been a country in history that's come back from that without defaulting, either outright or by hyperinflation. And that's why I have said for a long time, option number 3 is to find a villain. And that's Xi Jinping and Putin and OPEC, which goes directly into Jared Bernstein's thesis of losing the reserve status. I mean, it all makes sense if you look at it and line it up. So the question should really be, what happens when that switch is flipped? Yes, it's provocative as hell that United Arab Emirates told the world we're not going to take oil anymore. And Putin comes there the day after this. And by the way, makes that announcement 2 days before 200 countries from around the world are in his country to talk about climate change. Then Putin flies there, flanked by 4 military jets, hasn't left his country but twice in the last few years, and then goes directly to Saudi Arabia after that. Are these things coincidental? Is Jared Bernstein's thesis coincidental? We just happen to weaponize the dollar and sign an executive order. All of these things that continue to happen, one after the other after the other. And at the same time, is it coincidental? Gold was reclassified tier 1, and the central banks are buying it at a record pace never seen before and repatriating it, and now doing the same thing with silver. But not just that. Look at the London Metals Exchange drawdown in zinc and aluminum last year, and all of their commodities are being bled dry. Look at how China is going around the world and striking deals, building oil refineries and gold and silver mines, and helping these countries develop their natural resource base and offer mutual cooperation to help industrialize. And look at the countries that have signed on to BRICS already. The other 20, there are 20 that have now formally applied that I just saw the list yesterday. Every one of them is massively rich in resources, not in and of themselves capable of standing up to the West, or they end up just like Gaddafi did. But together, very, very formidable. And I think that is why, people have had a hard time seeing the progression of this. Excuse me, it hasn't unfolded fast enough. But they're doing things the right way, very methodically, where they are building a very large mass cryptocurrency. People would call it adoption. Well, they're building mass adoption. And when when the adoption has become so substantial and formidable, it's very difficult to push back against. And I think that's what they're doing. They're doing it the right way.
They're playing chess, we're playing checkers.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's funny. Exactly. It's like, and I like that. I'm so happy you made that $1 trillion statement into seconds. I feel like people don't understand how much bigger of a number a trillion is compared to a billion. I feel like the human brain can't even fathom how much bigger of a number that is. So when we say
31,688 years ago is a trillion seconds.
That's insane. And we're trying to get ourselves out of debt by replacing it with more debt. Say like that's trying to pay off a credit card with another credit card. It's going to catch up.
Well, and that's why, my mentor and hero, I guess you could say, for a very long time in business was Richard Russell. God rest his soul, long before your time. And I used to read Richard every single day, the Dow Theory letters. He was an amazing, amazing man. And I used to like reading him every day and would hope that he would talk about his life. He was a World War II bombardier and sat in the bottom of a B-52 dropping bombs in World War II Germany, and the stories that he would tell and his life experiences. I understood him to be one of the most fascinating people I had ever met. And he always, even back then, when the national debt would have been at the most when he was alive, 17 trillion or so, half of what it is right now. he always said the Fed has crossed that line. They have two choices, but to inflate or default. And I think there's option three, and that's what the West is choosing. And it's to find a villain that we can blame for blowing up the whole system. And that's exactly what I think the idea is. And then by weaponizing the dollar and signing an executive order to go green, you incentivize the villain to rally and to take the next step. And that's exactly what you see happening. And then all of the countries that are rich in resources that are sick of the 500-year dominance of the West, the collective West, are saying, yeah, this is our one shot. So let's do it the right way. So wait until you see the other countries that have signed up. Next time we talk, I'll give you the list of the other 20, and we can talk about it and look at all of their natural resources. And I focus on this because to me, it is the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. It is the ball. I don't think people quite understand the privilege, the exorbitant privilege we have enjoyed by being the world reserve currency. I don't think people understand it, but we lose it, they will. And that to me is why it is my singular focus. Everything else around it, like gold and silver's rise, will be as a byproduct of a falling dollar. Gold and silver don't go to the moon in and of themselves. They're valued. You can almost call them static in value, but
they are
measured against the volatility of a currency. If the dollar drops, they will go to the moon in reflection. Look at the fact that gold is at all-time highs almost against every currency on the planet, has been for a long time because of the strength of the dollar. The value of gold and silver are muted. Well, wait and see what happens when the demand for dollars, which has had a synthetic demand for 50 years because everyone's need to own it to buy oil. Watch what happens when that is no longer the case. And people will understand when things become exponentially more expensive in this globalized world. But the globalization that we see, we are being omitted from in terms of this new trend of moving away from the Western system of globalization. It will be a different system, and either you're part of it or you're not. And it'll be one that will be based upon mutual respect and cooperation and upon commodities and real things instead of the opaque debt-based system of the West. And that to me is something that is very clear. What it is that pushes things over the edge or changes the whole game forever, I don't know. But I think the probabilities of it happening are growing exponentially by the day. And seeing the union of Saudi Arabia and China and Russia and all of the OPEC countries and all of the oil producing countries and all of the natural resource rich countries joining in a cooperative fashion, if you don't see that, I think you're missing what to me is the most life-changing event of 21st century. I think it's coming.
Yeah. I feel like today's episode, you really brought it full circle. Like you started from point A and really wrapped it around, especially talking about how we are purposely or could be purposely doing this to ourselves for reasons and explaining those reasons very,
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe next week
thorough.
what we can do is we can go over the whole progression of events and we can tie that into silver and gold. And I'll bring everyone back to how this all started. I know maybe the very first episode we did, you and I talked about that. But for those people who haven't heard it, I'll give them the whole shebang, and you can figure it out for yourself. And we will document, we can say here are the 7 or 8 events, and then have people research those 7 or 8 events. Just Google them, if nothing else. And I think that would be a good way to justify the things that we're talking about so that people can see what I'm talking about. Like, I'll start at the beginning. This all started to me in 2017. And from 2017 to 2019 to 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, there have been an acceleration of events. And I can mention each milepost marker along the way. Maybe not a bad idea. If you're up for it, I am. And then I think what I'd really love to do, and I think we should, is the week after that will be our last episode of the year. and maybe we do a live stream,
Yeah,
and
we
if you're up
definitely
for it,
should.
we can recap the year
Yeah,
and
that'll
talk
be
about
cool.
what's coming.
Yeah,
You know,
I would
these
like
are
that.
all unscripted and we
Everyone,
kind of just go with
yeah,
it, but I got no problem in doing that. I think it,
yeah.
it would be a cool idea.
I remember the first episode when I really wasn't aware of the BRICS at all, really. Like I've heard it, I've heard of it, but that first episode, I was just sitting there with my jaw to the floor. I feel like everyone was. Like we were all just like blown away. It was so funny. Like, because I remember I think I premiered it and we were all in like the comment section together, like in the live chat watching it. And we were all just so like mind blown.
Well, a
But
lot has
for
happened in a year,
yeah,
and since
yeah,
we've become friends, and I think that if I were a betting man, I would say 2024 and maybe
yeah,
even first quarter of 2024 will be one of the craziest years of my 34-year career.
yeah,
Um, I think it's just beginning. And in March, you have $120 billion in the emergency lending program that the Fed lent out to these over leveraged and basically almost insolvent banks. If you take their unrealized losses and make them realize they are insolvent, this program, all that money is due to be paid back. And I think the first quarter of 2024 is going to be an incredibly interesting one. And as we get closer to the election, and there's a part of me that just is waiting for the next shoe to drop, something to happen. You
yeah.
got the head of the FBI saying he's more concerned than he's ever been in his career about homegrown terror cells and events. Well, geez, you let 10 million people across the border illegally, still not stopping it. You're
Right.
bound, and a lot of the people
That
that
is
they're
nuts.
finding are
Have you
from the
ever
Middle East and from Asia, and they're not just people coming
that
from
is
South
nuts.
America and Mexico.
Yeah.
These
They
are
aren't,
people
and
going
most of them
in.
aren't most of them aren't from Mexico. Like
Right.
I remember watching, it's like 90% plus are not Mexican.
Right. And so you put all
It's
that
crazy.
together with the lawlessness in the cities and the divisiveness in the country and the lack of unity and the fact that 65% of America is paycheck to paycheck, that 45% earning over six figures is paycheck to paycheck, record indebtedness, record low savings. These are not good things. And when you talk about having our backs to the wall as a country, as we've always been able to rise from that, we were united. We didn't have this. We respected authority, and it's anything but that.
Yeah.
And then you have this, the rumblings right now of a cyber attack, and it's interesting. You got, they're talking about a cyber attack. We keep hearing cyber attack, cyber attack. Well, it's interesting what Adam Lipinski, the head of the Polar Central Bank, said a few weeks ago, and I'm going to paraphrase it and get it kind of wrong, but Poland has bought more, second most gold in the world behind China this year, and I find very interesting. And he came out and said, "Look, Poland owns gold because when someone shuts off the light and turns off the power to the global system, monetary system, which is all electronic and digital, we hold gold as protection against something like that. Now, we don't expect that to happen," he says. But in fact, real quick, I know I got to run, and so do you. Let me just see if I can find the actual statement. I think I can that he said. It's kind of freaky because you got all of these countries right now that are talking about uh, a cyber attack, a cyber
Yeah.
attack that they expect
That's
to happen.
that's scary.
Let me see if I can find it. I don't know if I can, but maybe I can real
I
quick.
I put you can share the screen if you want to share it or just read it.
Let's see. I can Google it. Let me just hang on.
For me, while you're doing that, for me, everything really started, or when I caught wind was like the Iran tensions in 2020 or 2019, then the Saudi Arabian oil fields, and then right into that was the Chinese trade wars, and then COVID hit right after that, and then the $1 trillion stimulus, and then everything kind of just, yeah, it was right at like 29, then 2019 is when like I really was like, holy, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, well, it's
Uh,
all intertwined, no
then
question
ever
about
since
it.
then, yeah.
Yeah, I can't find it right now on the fly. I read it quite a bit. I got a new computer, and that's the problem. And I'm so illiterate with this. Gosh, maybe I can, let me just look one more spot. I think actually, wait, I might find it right here.
While we're looking, we got some deals, folks. 90% constitutional silver, dimes and quarters, $3 over spot. We also, though, we do have half dollars and we have mercury dimes. I don't want to get the numbers wrong, but I think half dollars are 375 over spot and mercury dimes are 350, and then Kennedy halves, which are BU, brilliant uncirculated, I think 15.7. I'm not going to say the numbers because I don't want to get them wrong, but it's not just the dimes and quarters 90%. We also have other constitutional silver as well. Or just ask for a price sheet, and then we have those deals. Eagles, no minimum anymore. 499 over spot. Slayer at milesfranklin.com. We could schedule a phone call today, or we could email, and I'll get you straightened out. And Andy set me up with his best broker. This guy, he's been helping me, and we'll place the order so you don't got to worry that like I'm gonna do it by myself. There'll be
hmm.
someone with me and teaching, so you're in good hands. So
I
yeah,
wish I could find it, my friend. I can't. But basically, you had the head of the Polar Central Bank who came out and said, we own gold because when the whole system blows up, since it's all digital, this is our protection. And even though we don't expect it to happen, well, this is why we own it. Think about it. You see some sort of an event, a grid event or an internet event where everything is down for a period of time. Everyone's wealth is digital right now. And
yeah,
so having some silver in your possession outside
yeah,
the system, who knows? Who would have ever thought our life would be turned upside down the way that it was in 2020?
yeah,
And no one saw that coming. So we are very dependent and reliant upon the world being digital. My buddy Bill Holter says, you want to know how reliant you are? Go home for one day, shut off the power, turn it off. No electricity, no telephone, no air conditioning, no computer, no nothing for one day. And you'll realize, unplug your refrigerator, see how well that goes. And I think that's one of these deals where people, take things for granted. And that's kind of what Lipinski is saying, that this is why we own gold in a situation where if the grid goes down or the internet goes down or there's an event, a cyber attack, we have it outside the system. So
yeah.
next
That's
week I will
beautiful.
come back and we'll go through this whole progression and people can decide for themselves where we are and is this for real. I think most people will come back and say, wow, these are things that we need to dig deeper into. And I welcome
Yeah,
everyone to push back against it. And we can even do the live stream the week after and have people comment on what they heard
yeah,
or whatnot. But anyways, I'll let you run. I appreciate it, brother. It's always it's nice to talk, and that's
yeah,
what it is that you and I get a chance to talk these things through and watch things unfold. And I look forward to continuing to do that with you very, very much. 2024 is going to be a hell of a year, and there'll be lots to talk about.
yeah. Man, I can't even imagine. So yeah, guys. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Sometimes these episodes can be heavy, but today
These
I
are
really
heavy
like this
times, man.
episode.
I mean,
Yeah,
these are heavy times,
yeah,
but and that's why it'd be nice for people who watch you to talk to you
yeah,
because I
yeah,
think relationships for where we're going in heavy times have never been more important. So
yeah, definitely.
um, I look forward to it, brother.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell so you immediately get notified every time I post something, especially nowadays. And I post daily, so I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.